Oh God,
Obviously,
yeah.
you need the space to do that.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what the shelves are for, and my wife keeps saying, you know, there's not much more room on
I've
that
heard
shelf.
That. Yes, yes.
And I always come back and say, well, there could always be another shelf. But I started with that Rick, and then it became a point for me that depending on the type of music that I'm playing, I really try to hold true to what the music was. So if it's a song that's been played on a P bass, I like to try and get as close to that tone as I can. So if it's a P bass with flat wounds or round wounds, in the case of Jamerson, you know, his labella deep talking bass were on there his entire life. Those strings were so dead. So I try to have a bass like that. This one has round wounds on it, depending on what I'm going to do. So I've got a pretty good assortment of you know, diverse instruments like a jazz bass with a maple neck, rosewood neck, flats, rounds, to try to get it, you know, as best as I can. I've also got a Jocko fretless too. Of course. Hey, you know.
The right tool for the right job.
The right tool for the right job, yeah. Well, you know, that actually for me happened kind of recently. I played with John Ford at this Beatles Fab 50 thing at Town Hall in the city.
Okay.
So for me to play on a stage like that was really just, it was very nerve-wracking. And then just being downstairs underneath when Al Jardine and all of these other artists are coming through was really, a wonderful, wonderful night. It was really met a lot of people and very, very inspiring to me. So that was a really great gig. I'm in a band called the Sixties Show. That's also a very, very good band, and only theaters, and a lot of it out of town, unfortunately, not a lot of it in New York, although in February we're playing at this auditorium in Malloy College on Long Island. But I'm blessed in that band to play with some very good drummers. They seem to rotate around the different drummers, and they've had Liberty DeVitto, Pagano, you know, Dennis Diken, and now Chris Parker, who's played with Bob Dylan, Paul Simon, Ray Charles. He's played with everybody. So as a bass player, you know, you really can't ask for more than that. Really haven't had any like that that have been really that bad. No, well, I'd say the funniest one was like years ago when I was playing that we actually broke into a park house and we hot-wired the electric so we could play a gig in there, and we ended up spending about 5 hours in jail. So, and I had to walk, I had my high-watt amp, so I had a high-watt, 100-watt head with a 150-watt bottom that I walked about 13 blocks to do this gig, which I actually wore the rubber off the casters. And that was probably the worst gig I ever did. So.